Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Content Matters podcast. This is like season 5, and I'm so amazed that I've actually been doing this podcast for 5 years. It's been a really great time, and huge thanks to Ingenix for sponsoring the whole thing and allowing me to do this. First episode of the year, and we have Paul Roetzer, who is the CEO and co-founder of the Marketing AI Insititute. And I really hope, Paul, I said your last name right, but I might not.
It's close enough. It's actually Roetzer. There's a whole story behind that, but I ride with Roetzer usually because that's the most common way people say it. So
Yeah, you need an A in there if it's going to be
I
spelled
know.
that
I was
way.
actually told by someone who from Germany that I'm mispronouncing my name as Roetzer, and I said, "Well, that's what I was given from my ancestors. I have no idea how to actually say it."
Well, there you go. It's all right. At least you're not named after a doll. Like, so make fun of that. But anyway, this is going to be a conversation on AI, particularly related to marketing and all the kind of stuff around that. But I'm sure that there's wider reaching topics. But before I kind of start with my first really, main question, I really like to know, like, what is kind of the wildest thing or the craziest thing you've kind of seen related to AI so far?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. I would say um, the wildest thing recently was Runway ML. So there's a company called Runway. They raised a lot of money, but they have a suite of magic, what they call AI magic tools for design, audio, and video are the main use cases. And a week ago, Monday, they introduced something called video to video, which lets you take any existing video and either text what you want to change of it, like what you want it to look like, or just give it a photo and it'll make it look like that. So just this morning, I saw a guy share on Twitter um, of video he recorded in his kitchen to simulate like Indiana Jones, like a scene from Indiana Jones. And he's used like kitchen appliances and stuff and walked in and picked up the water bottle and replaced it, just like in the opening scene where he's stealing the thing.
Yeah.
And then he overlaid an image he'd created in Midjourney and it synthesized the video to look like like an actual simulation of Indiana Jones. And it's
That's so
technology
cool.
that yeah, it's wild. So I think the the thing that's craziest to me is all the creative possibilities that now exist in many cases for people like me who have no creative ability. So whether it's image generation or video generation or editing that I would have never been able to do that I can now do those things is just really hard to comprehend still.
Yeah, I just imagine all the cool stuff we're going to do and imagine all the stuff we're going to look back and cringe and go, oh my God, I can't believe I did that.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
obviously I know we're going to get into some of the challenges of this. You know, there's downsides as well. There's amazing stuff that can be created, but there's also, you know,
Yeah.
elements that aren't so great about it.
Yeah. Right. So, okay. So let's get kind of digging in then. So here's the first thing. I was actually on a podcast on this topic last week. And and we dove right into the topic of chat GPT and kind of the
Mhm.
ins and outs of it. But one of the comments that came in the thing was, "Aren't you going to explain to us what Chat GPT is?" So I'm just wondering if there's still a lot of people, even though it's talked about everywhere, are there still people who don't understand what it is? And maybe we'll start with just kind of give us a quick kind of overview of what it is in generative AI overall.
Yeah, my perception is most people have no clue what it is. So they know they can go in and give it prompts and it gives responses. And there's people who've experimented with it and done really fascinating things. But do they actually know what a language model is and what GPT-3 is and how it's powered and how it does what it does? The answer to that, I think, in most cases is no, they don't. And the example, like I put this on LinkedIn yesterday in our podcast this week, we talked about this the thing I get all the time is, well, why can't it cite its sources? And if someone's asking you why it can't cite its sources, that's a pretty good indication they don't actually know how language models work.
Yeah.
Because ChatGPT is like 2-year old technology from OpenAI based on their GPT-3 language model. And the language model just predicts words in a sentence or in a sequence. It actually predicts tokens, is the more technical aspect of what it does. But for us, it means words. And so when ChatGPT outputs something to ask it to write an article, an outline, an essay, a press release, whatever, a movie script, it's just predicting words in a sequence. So it doesn't have anything to cite. Like it's not pulling from a source. It's writing original content based on its synthesis of knowledge. So the example I would give is like if you or I wanted to write an article about what is ChatGPT, we could go online and read a bunch of stuff, and then we would synthesize that learning and we would write an article explaining ChatGPT. Now, would we need to cite sources? Well, there weren't really a source to cite. We went and learned a bunch of information. We listened to some podcasts, watched some videos, read some articles, and we learned what ChatGPT is, and then we explained it, just like I'm doing right now. I'm not citing sources. I'm not explaining this to you. I could maybe, if you forced me to, I could probably think about like where were the sources that most influenced my knowledge about ChatGPT. But the way humans learn and share knowledge is we go seek out that information and then we synthesize it and then we explain things in words or you know written or audio or whatever. And
Yeah.
so that's all it is. It's a language model that learns from a corpus of knowledge and then it predicts words in a sequence. And people want it to be able to cite things and get its facts correct. And that's just not how they work right now.
So, but that's a challenge then, isn't it? Because if it's pulling in all this information, right or wrong, disinformation, some's correct, some's not. If you don't know where the sources are, how do you go about figuring out is what Chat GPT created for me accurate and at the same time not plagiarized, really? Like,
It's why we need humans in the loop. And that's the
yeah,
misunderstanding is people see this technology and they see these, demonstrations or they, use it themselves and it's a impressive output and it sounds authoritative. And the immediate assumption is, wow, writers are done. Like, what do we need writers for, or editors for, if AI is going to be this good at things? But then when you understand that they actually just make stuff up and they hallucinate all the time about facts and information, then you realize the importance of human editors and humans enhancing or adding on to what the AI generates. Now it's evolving and it's going to get smarter and it's going to be able to better cite the sources that influenced its output. Um, but this is why Google hadn't released this stuff yet. Like, Microsoft's forcing the hand of Google because OpenAI put ChatGPT out and 100 million people or what, however it actually is, like, we're working on it in January was the number that 100 million people were active users of ChatGPT. So OpenAI, does their deal with Microsoft. They race to build it into Bing and give people access. And now look at what's happening. It's going haywire, like which was predictable. Like anyone who knew what language models do, this is exactly what you assume the outcome would be, which is why Google hadn't done it yet. And so now you're going to have a bunch of AI agents learning in the wild, and it's going to get crazy. Like people are going to misuse these things and abuse them and come up with all kinds of crazy prompts that make the things just go nuts. And it was completely predictable. Like it's exactly where anyone who knew what was happening here was going to happen.
yeah. It's funny. Like, I just remember leaving for the holidays in December and just hearing the whispers of Chat GPT, and then coming back and it's like LinkedIn exploded, and it's like, it's horrible. It's not going to replace writers. It can't replace us. Oh my God, it is going to replace us. Oh my God, we can take advantage of it, and here's how we can use it. And it's just, it was, and then, when Microsoft got into it, and then Google had their little mishap with Bard. It's just been crazy to see all the stuff going on and how the reactions are kind of up, down. Like, and you're not hearing that, like what you're saying right now, with that kind of middle conversation of, okay, everybody, it's just kind of chill. We have to figure it out, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's wild to think about how much market cap value was lost by Google for a bad demo on
Yeah,
something that like it can't. So Google takes this crazy PR hit because they have a bad demo and it misstates something related to the James Webb Telescope and whether or not it photographed its first exoplanet, or the first exoplanet ever photographed, I think was the issue.
yeah,
But again, if you know how language model works, like it's not like the average person in the space would look and be like, "Yeah, that's totally understandable that it made that mistake." But yet you have this massive overreaction to this mistake because people don't understand the stuff. And then it comes out that Microsoft had all kinds of errors in theirs, but the market didn't react the same way to the issues with Microsoft's. So yeah, I think there's just this misunderstanding. And Michael, asked this question about explainable AI versus non-explainable AI and the need to train
Yeah.
these things. Like, though, it's a really good point, and I think that's the key for people to understand is these things are going to make mistakes because they're just making predictions about words. And you have people like Microsoft and Google and even OpenAI and others who are going to build other AI layers in that are going to be able to figure out, okay, what was the source or sources that influenced this output? That's how Bing's kind of doing it now. It'll give you an output response and then it'll show some sources. Well, those sources or recommended content, I don't forget what they call theirs, but they're basically then trying to interpret, well, what sources did influence the output that's giving, and then drive people to those additional sources to go learn more information. But in terms of actual citation, it doesn't really have something to cite unless you train the model differently to output things that are actually citing sources. Like there's a search engine or a company called Neva. It's Neeva, I think, and theirs is actually like built in. Like I think they have citations kind of built in, so they're doing it differently. But the point Michael was making is around this idea that, like, what we're seeing is the beginning of these things. And what's going to happen is you're going to have organizations and individuals and media companies and brands that are going to train these models and tune them specifically to their own knowledge bases, whether it's, video, audio, text, whatever. And they're going to get better and smarter, and they're going to be able to reference facts within a knowledge base they've been trained on. There's a Meta last week introduced something, a research paper where it can inject tools into the language model. So when it's arriving at like a date or a number, it can actually inject a calculator tool or a calendar tool. And so it can kind of learn to fact check itself by then searching another database. So the key takeaway, without getting overly complex here and technical, is these things are going to get way smarter. They're going to get faster. They're going to be able to check themselves for, facts and things. And so it's very, very early. And that's why I felt like the market cap drop for Google was a significant overreaction. Um, the debate about whether or not Microsoft should do what they did and if we should be training these AI agents in the wild like we are, that's a whole nother philosophical conversation.
Yeah.
But Microsoft, had a similar issue when they had that Tay Twitter bot years ago, and they yanked that thing in like 24 hours. Basically, the exact same thing is now happening in Bing, but they've decided that they no longer are going to like withhold this technology, that they're just going to accept that it's going to go haywire and it's going to learn. So I don't know. That, again, it's a totally philosophical debate about whether or not we should be allowing these things to be trained in the wild like they are.
Yeah. I would question, when you think about that, do, do people who are not in the industry like we are, do they really care if what they're getting from their search engines or from marketing people who are marketing to them, if it's written by a bot or written by a real person? And if they don't care, then they're going to see all this stuff before it's even, truly accurate and really well done. And it's going to cause a lot of problems for that reason, because they don't care. I don't care who tells me the information, just tell me what I want to know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's way more media attention to AI right now, and there's way more curiosity from the average person. Even people that don't work in our space at all are talking about ChatGPT and trying it. And um, so I think there's just more, it's more in the consciousness of people right now, whether or not AI is creating things. But I don't know that the average person will care down the road, as long as they get the answer to what they're looking for. So if we keep this in the context of a search engine, and I'm trying to find information, whether the AI synthesized some stuff and gave me the answer, it doesn't really matter to the user. And then if I want to go learn more about the topic, as long as there's some links there. Now, do I care if they're actual citations or not? No, I'm just trying to find information. I'm trying to find answers to something. I'm going to San Francisco next week and I want to stay at a hotel closest to the convention center or whatever it is. I don't want 10 links and have to click through and read a bunch of, like, just tell me which one is the best one and why.
Yeah.
And so as a user, that's all I want. It's all I've ever wanted from search is just give me the answer. Um, and I think Google's position on this last week, they made it very clear, like they don't care if AI creates the content. So as a brand, as a content marketer, as a writer, if you're using AI to assist, Google is now very clearly saying, as long as it's valuable content and it's not, spam or junk, we don't care algorithmically about whether or not you used AI to create it. So now that being said, I think there's going to be a shift where um, there will be a premium on human generated content, authentic human content. So I think things like this, videos, podcasts, events, things where I know it is a human thinking it and saying it and using their experience and knowledge to synthesize information for me. I believe that we'll go very quickly in a direction where people are going to put a higher value on things that they know are authentically human, because you're going to assume a lot of what you're going to read in text is probably going to be generated by AI. So it's not like it
Right.
won't be valuable to me, but I think I will have a greater value when I know it's actually the point of view of the person and I'm hearing it from them directly.
Yeah, no, I agree. So let's look at it then from the terms of writers and content marketers. Then
Mhm.
um, we know it. We know it's not a replacement, but there are companies out there. I do believe that are going to say, look, I can get my content from a Chat GPT or another generative AI tool because there's tons of tools out there that do this. This is just the one that get everybody's attention. Um, but I do believe there are companies that are gonna at least start and say, "I can get my blogs written by an AI. I don't need a writer." Is it going so it's I think that's gonna happen. I don't think it's gonna
It's
last
happening.
long.
It's
Yeah.
already happening.
Yeah, and so, I mean, there's concern by writers, and rightly so, that, if you're just writing generic blogs or generic content, you are gonna lose that work. So, what is the best way, I guess, for writers and content marketers to really leverage these tools to for the good and to not, I guess, replace people? I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, so the position that we generally take on it is that AI is not going to replace the writers. The writers who use AI will replace the writers who don't. It's just like the simple, and that takes inspiration actually from a 2018 article by a radiologist who said this about radiology 5 years ago that like
Okay.
AI is not going to replace radiologists, but the radiologists who do will replace the ones who don't. And I think that's going to be true in every single profession. Writing, is kind of a starting point right now, but it's going to happen everywhere. Architects, engineers, developers, marketers, content marketers, writers, SEO professionals, like everybody is going to have to infuse AI in the process. What's happening right now is you have leaders at companies in marketing in particular who don't understand language models and have sort of these knee-jerk reactions. They'll use ChatGPT and be like, "Well, what do we need our writing team for? We can just ask ChatGPT to write it, and we'll just have a few editors to do editing." I just think it's the wrong way to look at it. I think you have to look at your ability as an organization to improve your productivity, to increase your output, to create more value for your audiences and readers. And you can dramatically do that with AI. You can, go from a writer who maybe writes an article a day to three or five a day, or maybe they're doing something else like getting involved in video production or podcasts, and like they're taking the time they're saving and redistributing it. Now, in the economic environment we're in, that's not what's going to happen. So that's
Right.
the unfortunate part of this is there's economic pressure to drive efficiency in organizations and to reduce headcount or not increase headcount, I would say. And so the natural thing is you're going to have leaders who are making these decisions around humans and their workforce based on a very basic understanding of the technology itself. And I think you also have to realize like the tech is going to get way, way better really soon. And so what we're seeing today is going to be child's play compared to what we can do with these technologies in, as little as 12 months. And so
Mm.
it's just a really hard time to be a leader in an organization and be trying to make decisions around what you need from your workforce and writers in particular when it's very uncertain right now where this is all going and what it's going to mean to your teams.
Yeah, I do see a challenge, especially for freelance writers, who, charge a certain amount for a blog or an article or by a project. And the company saying, well, if you're leveraging AI tools to help it and help you do stuff faster, then your rate should go down. Or, I shouldn't have to pay you this much money because your AI is doing half the work for you. I do think that's going to be a challenge for a lot of writers to try to explain, well, that's not how it works. That I'm actually able to use my skills in other areas more than I would have if I had to start everything from scratch on my own.
Yeah, so I don't know if people know my background at all, but I owned an agency for 16 years. So we were largely a content marketing agency. We were HubSpot's first partner. So we were, all very early in on marketing automation and inbound marketing. But generally speaking, we created content to build audiences and leads for clients. Um, I have been a huge believer that billable hours was a fundamentally broken model for a long time. My book in 2011, The Marketing Agency Blueprint, chapter 1 was eliminate billable hours, because my feeling was professionals, writers, content marketers, whatever, they need to charge for the value they create. And so if I can do something quickly, like write an article for you in 2 hours, and it takes someone else 5 hours, why should I only charge you for 2 hours? That you're paying me for the output of that article, the quality of that article, and all my experience and knowledge to create it. So my immediate take with ChatGPT and all these writing tools is, if you're a creative professional still charging for your time, you are in deep trouble.
Right.
Because if you're a graphic designer or video production person or a writer, you can now do your job significantly more efficiently. So yes, you are either padding your numbers and still charging the client for the time it would have taken you if you hadn't used an AI tool, or you're realizing, well, the quality of my output is still of value to them. I'm not going to charge them for the 30 minutes it took me instead of the 3 hours it used to take me. So I do worry about creative professionals who are still charging by the hour for their work, because this did disrupt them significantly. And
Yeah.
and as the CMOs and the people who hire them realize this, then yes, there's going to be a dramatic downward pressure on what they're able to charge, because the people paying them are going to realize they can get the work done a lot faster.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, if we were ever going to be the writing, freelance writing kind of market ever going to be challenged, this was definitely the thing that was going to challenge us. And
Yeah.
yeah, I hate the pay by the hour. I think it does not reflect the capability of the person necessarily that's doing the work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jacques had an interesting question. He said, we're already, he's concerned that we're already drowning in bad human written marketing content. So, how do we need to rethink content marketing within the context of what our customers need, and finding ways for the good content, regardless of who wrote it, which I agree with that? How do we get it to rise to the top?
Yeah, I mean, this is a multi-layered question. So one is, what are the search engines going to reward, and how are people going to find our content? So if you think about it from you're creating content to bring people to your site, to grow an audience, to generate leads, to drive conversions and whatever. So you're publishing this content to be found, basically. The question is, in the future, are the search engines going to drive people to you anymore? So you're going to create this content. It's going to be a part of training these AI agents how to respond to things. And then in the future, am I just going to ask a question and get an answer, and I'm never going to need to click over and read your stuff?
Yeah,
So I don't know the answer to that. Nobody actually really knows the answer to that. I'm sure Bing and Google are thinking about it. Um, Google in particular, because their business model is obviously dependent upon publishers.
yeah,
So I think there's that part of the equation, like what is rewarded from a content perspective moving forward. And then the other part, again, gets into what is the value of that content you're creating. And it goes back to what I was saying about it. I think that people are going to want to know that they're hearing from actual people in an organization. So if you're a brand or you're a marketing agency or a publisher, they're more and more going to want to actually see and hear the people behind that content. And so I think videos and podcasting are going to take on greater value, most likely in the near future, because it's the kind of stuff that, well, I guess we could get into synthetic versions of ourselves and deep faking voices and stuff. But let's assume that people are aware that it's actually me talking and not a synthetic version of me at the moment.
Mhm.
um, yeah, I think it's a moving target. It's a very hard thing. So like we announced an AI for Writers Summit that's going to happen in March. And the whole reason I did that and we made it free to sign up was because there's all these unknowns right now. There's all this uncertainty around what impact is this actually going to have on me as a writer, on my team if I run a marketing team of writers, on publishers, on higher education who are teaching writing right now, writing
Mhm.
professions, who may come out of school without the kinds of jobs that they think they were going to have. Like nobody knows. And so I think questions like that are great questions, and they need more people thinking deeply about the answers than, I'm not going to solve all this on my own. Like
Yeah.
there's just too many unknowns. And I think the more people understand the base knowledge of what this technology is and what it's capable of doing, then they can think about its application to their business and their domain and their expertise and figure out the future, because it's going to be challenging.
Yeah. I agree that you have to understand it to the level that you can understand it anyway, to be able to understand how it works and how it's going to work for your company.
Yeah.
Um, I watched a video that Christopher Penn did on
Yeah.
SEO and generative AI, and I thought he had a really interesting perspective of how we have to really now focus on brand awareness and brand marketing. So if people are searching Google and the answer is coming right up, they're not clicking to your website. So you really have to build your brand and your communities a lot more now. So ways and things that we already were thinking about, but it's really driving a shift in how marketing needs to reassess how they're trying to get people to pay attention to them and to engage with them.
Yeah, I think it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to assume, if you're dependent on organic traffic today, just assume it's going away. No,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's true. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but it's almost like, years ago on Facebook, like everyone just wanted to get as many likes or followers on Facebook as possible to their brand pages. And then Facebook changed the algorithm and all of a sudden the traffic just went away. And people weren't prepared for that. And I think that in SEO, it may not be that we may not go to zero, but I would have a hard time envisioning a future where organic traffic isn't going to drop significantly.
Yeah.
The answers are going to be easier to find, whether it's through voice assistants that actually become usable and I just get my answers by asking a question, or I just get a synthesis of it through a search engine. So I think you have to assume if your business depends on organic traffic, that traffic is going to significantly drop in the very near future. And it does increase the importance of newsletter subscriber base and podcast subscribers, and like the people who are actively seeking your content out become way more critical for brands.
Yeah. It's definitely going to be interesting times. So let's talk about, I mean, we sort of already did talk a bit about plagiarism and copyright and
Mm.
incorrect information, but and your perspective from a text-based perspective, but also there's a very different conversation happening from a visual and images perspective. It seems like the copyright is a much more bigger deal than from taking the text off the internet.
Yeah, right now, so first is probably, let's address this as the creatives that are using AI to output something. You can't copyright it. So there's zero protection for an image you created from Dolly or Midjourney or Stability AI. Now, you're not going to well, I won't say that. Say you're not going to get sued. That's maybe not true. Uh,
Mhm.
you have commercial rights to what you create. It's an original output, but at least in the US, the US Patent and Trademark Office does not recognize AI generated images and videos. It has to be a human author of text as well. So you have no copyright protection from the things you're creating. So I think that's a very important thing for people to know right off the jump. Now, for the companies that are building these tools, they have much bigger concerns because they trained this content on copyrighted content, or they train these tools on copyrighted content in many cases. So there are going to be cases that go all the way to the US Supreme Court in our world that deal with rights around the content and how it was trained, and they're going to probably have to pay massive settlements to make this go away. And I don't know that it does, but I mean, there's a case right now where they're being sued around the training data for Stability AI because they apparently just learned from Getty images they didn't have the rights to, and they know that because the Getty watermark is showing up in outputs from the machine. So
Hmm.
they didn't even
Okay.
hide it. So there, how it learned and did it have the rights to take that content in to learn from is a whole nother realm. Now, again, the average writer isn't dealing with that or thinking about it, but so I would stick to, as a writer, as a creative professional, the stuff you create with the AI, it's very uncertain around any rights you have to that content.
Hmm.
Um, so if you were to go file an image with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, a logo, for example, if an AI generated your logo, you have no protection rights to it.
That's kind of
So I
scary.
can steal it, and then nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, that's scary, really, if you think about it. How many people are going to actually use those tools and think that they have created something that
Absolutely.
is theirs?
They're going to slap a TM on it, like trademark, and then they're going to try and file it with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, and other people that come along and steal their stuff, and they're going to have no ramifications to it, like nothing they can do about it.
Is there a privacy impact to using these kind of tools?
Sure. I know of quite a number of organizations in regulated industries that can't get access to them. It's shut off to even use the tools on the corporate computers and network because they don't want the information shared. So, like, if you think about, Chat GPT, like, let's say I don't know how it uses the data it gives me, and I don't know how these models work, and I just start putting in prompts where I'm putting in personal information or a client's personal information or financial data from a company and asking it to write a summary. That check the terms of use is all I would say on all these models before you start putting private information in. So the immediate reaction, and probably the right reaction from these regulated industries, is just shut it down. Don't give access to use it, because right now we don't know, like, how that private data is going to be used. So yeah, I mean, all all of that is very real concerns and things that I think people need to be thinking about, especially for again, the bigger brands and the publishers who can't take these kinds of risks, like freelance writers and stuff. Like, I mean, you always have to evaluate the risk of everything you're going to try, but these bigger brands, like, they can't misfire on stuff like this. They're gonna have regulators on them for it. So yeah, it's very real concerns.
Yeah. Um, I don't know why it's not popping up, but Michael's saying we need to explore how we can tell these LLMs to prioritize our own custom LLMs over theirs, or use our custom ones to retrain the public ones. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, so explore how we can tell these things. Okay, so this is right now it's a bigger development lift to do something like this. So that, if you wanted to take like a GPT-3 and you wanted to train it on your own proprietary knowledge and data from your company, or if you're a writer, say, like, I want to feed it 1,000 articles I've written so it writes like me. So rather
Yeah.
than a general model like ChatGPT, I want it to write in my voice and style and tone and brand guidelines. Um, it's harder to do. You can work with a company like Writer. Writer.com is one of our partners at the Institute, and they'll actually train models on your brand guidelines and style and tone. So from a corporate perspective, you can go do it. But if you're an individual and you wanted to actually train a model on everything you've created, so if you're me and I want to say, like, okay, here's all my podcasts, all my webinars, all the articles I've written, all my LinkedIn posts, like, learn from this corpus of knowledge. There isn't, that I'm aware of at the moment, a company that has made that model available where I just feed my data, upload it, and, like, here you go, and it just learns all that.
Yeah.
I think it's inevitable that that's in the very near future, that it's going to be way easier to train these models and tune them to your specific voice and brand, either individually or as a company. So you could envision, like, the New York Times as an example, they could tune models specific to each writer. So every writer has their own personalized version of a language model trained on all of the articles that that writer's ever written. So now it actually assists them in writing in their own voice and tone and style. That is an inevitable outcome of where this is heading, I would say.
Somebody's probably already out there trying to build that right now.
Oh, I can guarantee you they are.
Yeah. So you started the Marketing AI Institute back in like 2016. what made you decide to start it? Like what because I mean, yeah, we've been talking about AI for quite a while, but I mean, it's
Yeah.
really kind of hitting the extremes now of like the I don't know if we're at the top of that hype cycle or if we're kind of halfway up it or something, but what made you decide to start it and what how do you see things going right now?
So I started researching AI in 2011 just out of a curiosity. So I was running my agency at the time. I'd just written my first book, um, and I saw Watson win on Jeopardy, and I became curious like what that was and how it worked, and if I could apply it to marketing strategy and budget in particular. I was trying to see if I could use AI to help with that. So I just went down a path of exploration, trying to figure it out. And by 2014, when I wrote my second book, I wrote a little bit about AI in it, more of a theory of this ability to build an intelligence engine that would be infused into driving marketing strategy. It was just a like a vision at the time. It wasn't practical.
Yeah.
And then by 2015, I was traveling the world doing talks on artificial intelligence. And I realized, wow, there's a really fascinating story to be told here. And I looked at our background, and again, coming out of journalism school and running an agency, I was a storyteller by trade. Like I wasn't the person who was going to build these things. And so I thought, well, our unique value here is we can help figure this out by telling the story of AI. So I launched the Institute to just start doing that. As we were doing this research, it's like, let's just start sharing it. We'll put blog posts up, we'll do interviews with entrepreneurs, and we'll figure out what's going on and where it's going in the process. And so that was the formation of the Institute. And then by 2018, we had like 7,000 subscribers and to the blog, and I split it off as its own company and kind of created this separate entity that was a media event and education company. Because at that point, I thought we were a few years away from it being infused into every piece of software, and I overestimated that. I would say because we're not even close to that right now, but I underestimated I think the total impact it would have. And so once I realized that in 2021, I sold my agency and focused solely on the AI Institute.
How many AI vendors, you know, mark application vendors have you kind of talked to and been working with?
So we've interviewed close to 200. We do vendor spotlights on our site where we ask these same 9 questions. We started doing this in 2016, so we have this pretty cool database of all these answers through the years. And then we've personally probably tested. I mean, we use probably 15 to 20 AI tools. We're a 5-person team. We have like 15 to 20 tools we use in different ways within the organization. And so I would say we've probably demoed or tested, I don't know, 50 to 100 if I had to stop and think about it. Um, so we look at a lot of AI tech. I talk to a lot of AI entrepreneurs. I talk to a lot of venture capital people who are investing in these companies and angel investors. And so we have a pretty good pulse on just generally what's going on and where this might be going as best as anybody can guess at that at the moment.
Do you ever get tired of talking about it? Because you're on a lot of
No,
podcasts, you're writing a lot of articles, you're in
yeah.
events.
No, I think it now is when it matters because now
Yeah.
people are listening. I mean, we had before Chat GPT, I mean, there was people listening. We had 30 some thousand subscribers at that point, and
Yeah.
but it's taken off dramatically since Chat GPT. So like we teach an intro to AI for marketers class that I used to get 300 registrants for on average. The last two have had 850 each. Um, in a normal month, we might add 500 new subscribers. I think we added 2,200 in January. So
Mm,
the interest in the topic is so significant now. And now it's more important than ever that we actually teach people what it is and how to use it because now you're at the point where you're going to get this mass, I don't know, adoption is the right word, mass experimentation might be a better word,
yeah,
and people are not going to know what they're doing or what they're playing with. And again, my big focus is that the leaders know so that we can do this responsibly and that we don't allow bad decisions to be made about the application of AI within organizations.
yeah. So what is the thing that kind of excites you the most kind of going forward? There I mean, there's lots of stuff, so must be one thing that kind of stands out for you.
Um, I would say I think of generative AI is certainly transformational, but I think a lot of people are going to get distracted by it. I think that there's so many people are new to AI and they think if they solve chat GPT or AI writing tools, then they're good and that's it.
Mm,
And I think it's what comes next that's most exciting and scary to me because the AI is going to play a far greater role in our daily work as knowledge workers and creative professionals and business leaders than most people could even fathom, and in the near future, I think. And so, whether that's the intelligent automation of repetitive tasks across businesses, the involvement of AI in making predictions and decisions within organizations, enhancing decision making, the infusion of it into anywhere where negotiations occur and communications are happening between individuals. Like, there's so much more to AI than people are currently talking about. But my hope is that generative AI kicks open the door so that people start paying attention to all the other ways it's going to be used, good and bad, because we just need more people thinking and talking about the important stuff around workforces and upskilling of teams and ethics, and responsible AI. And until people could experiment with it, they just didn't care about those other topics. And so my hope is people will now care about those other topics in short order because they've seen it for themselves.
Yeah, I definitely, there are so many ways we can use this technology. It's really exciting to think about where
Yeah.
it's going to go and where it's already headed. It's already getting used in lots of different ways already, so it's pretty cool. So yes, all right. Well, thank you, Paul, for
Yeah.
being
It's cool.
episode
Appreciate
one.
everyone joining us and great questions.
Yeah, and this was great. So thank you everyone for listening, and we will see you next month.